So we have seen yesterday there are various kinds of framework which can be implemented within the organization. The one of the you can say the godfather of standard, the cyber security standards, or you can say the information security, is your ISO standard. Basically, ISO 27001 is the basic standard, and the ISO 27001 standard can be, you can say, the certifications of an organization can achieve certification by implementing ISO 27001 standard. What needs to be done? That all the things are listed in the ISO 27001 standard. Let me open the ISO 27001. This is the ISO 27001 standard. The information technology security techniques, information security management system requirement. Basically, all the requirement related to information security has been listed in this standard. This standard has been divided into two parts. In the first part, there is a organizational requirement, what needs to be implemented within the organization. The first part is distributed from clause number 1 to clause number 10. This is the management requirement, what needs to be implemented. In the management requirement, we need to have you can say we need to understand our organization, we need to do the risk assessment, and all things are covered in clause 1 to 10. Another part of the standard is your Annex A part. Annex A part is the information security control objectives. In this Annex A part, the requirement related to controls has been given. Okay. All the controls which we have seen yesterday, the controls related to the management, the controls related to the technical, you can say, and people related control and the physical security related control has been divided into, has been covered into Annex A part. Now, the first we need to understand what standards say. You can see here there is the information security policy, the 8.5 saying the related to information security policy. Here you need to a set of policy of the information security shall be defined, approved by the management. A requirement has been said by the standard that you need to have a proper information security policy within the organization. And another clause is saying that you need to review those information security policy on a regular interval of the time. So these two clauses are saying, but the question comes here, what are the things we are going to cover in our information security policy? What, how we are going to review those things? For those things, what needs to be done? Okay, is listed in ISO 27001 standard, because this is basically a requirement. What needs to be done? All this, for this we need to refer ISO 27002 standard. ISO 27002 standard, you can see this is the ISO 27002 standard. You can see here it's for information security, cyber security, privacy protection, and information security control. So this basically this standard is applicable for the cyber security, for the privacy information, and all the information security controls are there in the ISO 27002 standard. Yesterday we have seen the total, there are total 93 controls. Some controls has been removed because this ISO 27002 standard has been recently launched. This standard has been recently launched in 2022. So there are certain changes in the standard. What are those changes? We'll see one by one. What are those changes? We will see. Basically, earlier the standards have 114 clauses. Okay, and it is divided into 14 groups. The 27002 2013 version have, you need to note it down here.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to note it down here. Earlier, the standard version was ISO 27002, ISO 27002 2013 version. Now we have the standard has been revised. Now the standard is 2022 version. So we'll see in detail what actually the changes happen in the standard, because when you go for the interview, this kinds of question may be asked from you also. What are the changes are there in the standards? What are the things? What has been introduced in the standard? We need to see what actually those changes are. So we are going to see here what is new in ISO 27002 2022 version. Benefits of ISO 27002 standard. It's establishment of the best practice within the organization. Client and the business partner will more confident on the organization. Specific how ISMS should be implemented, managed, and evaluated. So the standard focus on how to implement your information security management system, how to manage your system, and how to evaluate your system. 27002 is a specific control techniques that intend to address the specific issues discovered during the risk assessment process. What are the issues what we have discovered during our risk assessment process? Appropriate control we need to put. So we can refer ISO 27002 standard to put the appropriate control. It serves as a roadmap for creating and implementing effective security management procedure. How effective security management procedure we can implement within the organization, it also going to focus. ISO 27002, it's a supplementary standard that explain how the organization should implement ISO 27001 controls. So earlier, you can see earlier in the ISO 27002 2013 version, there are 114 controls. There are total 114 controls. Now ISO 27002 was grouped into 14 chapters. 14 domains were there, and all the 14 domains control 114 controls. Now in ISO 27020 27002 2022 version, the 93 controls are there that has been grouped into the 4th chapter. The control would be marked by your control type. What are the control? What are the classification? This has been aligned to NIST framework also. What is the NIST concept say? And the operational capability. What are the operational capabilities? Where these things are going to focus? So we have seen that the organization, this standard has been divided into 4 categories: organizational, people, physical, and technical controls. The term code of practice has been dropped. Now the control have now been divided into 4 categories. Consolidated control in ISO 27002 and 27022 version. Policies of information security, that was earlier 5.1. Now these has been clubbed to 5.1.1 and 5.1.2. The same 8.1 and 8.1.2 has been clubbed. So you can see here there is a mapping. This mapping can be also seen in the standard. When you scroll down the standard to the last, so we can see those mapping also. So I will let you know from where we can refer these things. New controls has been implemented. New controls had been introduced, like your threat intelligence has been introduced, data masking control, DLP related control, monitoring services has been incorporated. Web filtering, earlier there was no web filtering. The web filtering and secure coding has been incorporated. In same way, information deletion procedure, your configuration management was not part of the 20 ISMS. Configuration management has been also introduced. Physical security monitoring is also been introduced, and your BCP, they have much focused on the business continuity plan. Some of the controls you can say has been deleted, like your removal of assets, your reporting of information security weaknesses, and handling of assets. These controls has been deleted from the standards. So this is our new ISO 27002 standard. This standard has been divided into 4 categories. The first is your organizational control. Another control is your people control. The third control is your physical control. And the fourth control type is your technological control. So this has been divided into 4 types of controls. Now, when you scroll to the last, when you come to the last in the standard, you can come to know what are the preventive controls, what are the, in the first Annex A part, you can see these controls has been mapped with the control type, and the cyber security related concept also had been identified, like a NIST framework, identify, you can say identify the comes from the NIST framework, your protect, your respond, recover, all things comes from your NIST framework. So this has been also mapped with the NIST framework. So independently, we have now we need not to go to implement NIST independently, and then cybersecurity related another standard independently. We can implement ISO 27002 control within the organization, which will help you to comply with the various standards.
To remember all this.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying, do we have to?
No, it will take time to remember all the controls. Once you will be in the practice, then you will surely remember these things. But now, when we don't remember this, we can refer the standard. We should know how to refer the standard. If certain requirements comes to you, which clause you need to refer. So understanding is very important. It will take 2 to 3 years of time to understand each and every clause, and you go to each and every things. Once you will be able to familiar with these kinds of terminology and the standards, clause number and all, then the standard will be changed and it will be revised. So we need to have grasp the concept behind the standard. What basically the concepts are, in which clause if there are certain failures related to access control, then which types of control I need to refer. These things we should know. If certain thing comes to the asset management, then which clause you should refer. If certain things related to the physical security related things, then which clause you need to refer. So these 93 controls we need to implement within the organization. This will be implemented, this will be surely implemented within your organization also. In the certain form, how we are going to implement the standard within the organization. The first thing is that you need to have a documented process. Everything should be documented, nothing should be verbal. If you are talking about any, if you are talking about any implementation of any control, then the first thing is that this should be documented. How we need to document it? We need to have a proper policy and procedure within the organization. Once we'll document the thing, then we are going to implement the thing. And once the things are implemented, then we need to monitor it, whether the implementation is working or not. Then monitoring phase come. In monitoring, different logs would be there, and you need to review those logs. The monitor phase would come. These things, this is the flow of implementing anything within the organization. The documentation will start once you will identify the risk. So normally the risk identification is the base. The moment we have identifying the risk, then we are going to do the documentation, implementation, and the monitoring part.
Got it.
We will go one by one. We'll see each and every standard. We're not going to start from the organization and control. We're going to start from the people related control, because this is the entry point of employee within the organization. So first we'll see people control, then we'll see each and every control in details. Now you can see in the people control, the first part is your screening. The screening is your first part. Uh, let's go to screening. Screening is a preventive control. This screening is going to work on the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, all three parts. It would be in the cybersecurity protect phase, and human resource security is going to cover. In the GRC, it is going to cover governance and the ecosystem part. So it would be a preventive control. Now there are certain guidelines has been given in the standard. Background verification check on all candidates to become personal should be carried out prior to the joining of the organization and on an ongoing basis, taking into the consideration the applicable laws, regulation, and ethics proportional to the business requirement. The classification of information should be assessed based on the perceived risk. Now, the standard is saying that you need to do the background verification checks of the candidates before they are joining. It could be possible. Does it make sense? You
Yes.
can. Okay. Now what will happen if a candidate backs out? Suppose you have interviewed a candidate, we have waited for him for 2 months, but the candidates back out. He didn't join, but you have done all his background verification checks. In that case, you have spent a lot of money on doing the background verification check of the candidate, and even though candidate doesn't join, does it suitable for the organization?
Mm, I mean, if it doesn't join, the org wasted money.
So if this control you are going to implement within your organization, what your organizational head will say? You are, if suppose in a year 200 candidates has been backed out, and one candidates you are taking $2,000 USD. So you have spent lots of money, but none of the candidate has joined. It will
Yeah.
impact on your performance also, na?
Yes. Yes.
So how to deal with such things? Normally, it should be done prior to your things. Now, some of the times candidates also say, boss, please don't conduct my background verification check. My previous employer will come to know where I'm going to join, but I don't want uh, let them know where I am joining. So there should be certain cases. So certain cases should come. What we need to do, we need to understand the criticality. Now here, what we can do, there would be solutions also. Everything is not focusing on you only to do. We can make our solutions also how to do the background verification. This would be when you are going to implement the standard within the organization. This would be a real time, you can say, a challenge. Suppose you are the person who is implementing this control within the organization. Now HR manager will say, boss, by 50% candidates choose to back out.
Mm,
Then what would be the solution?
maybe we put like a control over it, saying that I don't know if it works in the real world, but it's my just guess. Mm, maybe sign some kind of bond or something.
A bond
Wait, can you hear
also,
me?
because
Okay.
employee is not able to sign a bond with you. There are certain legal requirements also. You cannot sign bond with the employee. In the certain country, it's unfair practice.
Okay. Yes.
It is also you cannot challenge in India itself. The bond the uh, employers are having the bond with the employee, but this cannot be challenged in any court.
Yeah.
Because this is illegal to have a bond with employee. You cannot bound anyone to work with you. A contract is another thing. The people will
Yes.
have a contract with them and people will work with you. The bond, you cannot have a bond with employee. It's illegal practice.
Yes. I'm not sure about the.
So there should be certain, we need to think because this is our job.
Yes.
This would be our job. You are going to implement these controls within the organization. So there should be a certain way out. Uh, what we can is first we need to categorize what are the things we are going to include in the background verification check. What are the things you are going to have? The first thing what you are
Um,
going to have,
previous employee verification, police records, criminal records. Uh, that's all I know.
employment verification. Okay. Employment verification, criminal check, identity check, educational check, educational check you are going to have, employment verification, criminal identity, education, anything else. Fraud check also you can check, like your civil score, or you can say financial things, whether you have not you have done any fraud with any of the banks, or you have taken a loan, you have been defaulters for that. So checks also we can do. Your work permit also we can check whether you do have a proper work permit or not. Yeah. So these are the things we have identified to check. Now we can categorize here. What is the critical before hiring a candidates? Like your criminal checks, we can do the criminal checks because it's available sometimes free with a police department. Sometimes we work permit also we can verify. Educational checks also we can verify. Okay, employment verifications and all those things. You can say financial things are involved. So we can categorize our things. What are the things we are going to have before joining a candidates, and what are the things we are going to do after joining the candidate, so that this would not going to impact on us. So first we need to categorize the things. What are the things would be included as a part of background verification checks? Then accordingly we will implement the controls. So this would be a background verification checks part. And before initiating these things, you are going to, you can say, screen the candidates, whether these candidates are able to work with our organizations or not. Now, this is the first thing. Before hiring and after hiring, you can do the background verification checks. Now, what about the candidates who is working with you for the last 5 years? And those candidates doesn't involve in any criminal practices, and uh, employee, those employee are not stealing your data. How you are going to verify those things? On job, some of the organizations are implementing these practices, they are doing the background verification checks on your on job basis also. When you are doing working with them also, they are doing your background verification checks also. So this would be an ongoing basis. This doesn't mean that once you have hired a candidate, then he is not going to involve any criminal practices, or he is not going to involve any fraud related things. This would be your ongoing. Your when you are hiring a candidate, you need to do certain verification checks. Uh, After joining, you are going to do the certain verification checks, and during your job tenure also, the companies are doing background verification check. They are marking as a red flags also if you are involved in certain practices. So, so this in this way we need to do the background verification check. Now you can see verification should take into the consideration of all relevant privacy, PIE protection, and employment-based legislative, and should where permitted into the following: availability of the satisfactory references, your business and personal references also. You need to verify the references. Verification for completeness and accuracy of the applicant's CV, what the candidates has written in their CV. You need to also verify those things, whether the things had written during the interview is actually the people say working or not. A confirmation of the claim academic and professional qualification, independent identity to verify like a passport and other acceptable document issued and appropriate authority. More details verification such as credit review or the review of criminal records of the candidate takes on a critical role. You need to review their credit also. When an individual is hired for a specific information security role, the organization should make sure the candidate has the necessary competence to perform the security role, can be trusted to take on a role, especially if the role is critical for the organization. So until you will not perform their verification, it should be a delayed onboarding, delayed corporate assets should not be issued, reduced access, and the termination of the employment also should be there. So this is the requirement related to your background verification checks. These are the things should cover. Now, what is your role? What is the role of information security practitioners or a GRC professional? So these things should be identified in a risk. First thing you need to identify these things, the risk related to the background verification in the risk, in the people risk you need to identify. Then based upon those risks, you need to have a proper control. Now, once you are going to put a control, you will need a proper policy in the organization. And this policy should be approved. there would be a proper background verification check policy.
So this is just for one. It's just for the these guidance are just for the background check implementation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Here we need to find out a frame a policy. We need to take, you need to consider these requirements, your satisfactory references, your passport checks, academic checks, your curriculum, your CV checks and all. Until the background verification check is not completed, you need not to onboard the user. Now, another thing is the terms and condition of the employment. The terms and condition of the employment is your preventive one. It is going to protect CIA. Basically, it is always is going to protect the CIA, and it comes under the protect part. The responsibility is your human resource. A proper contract would be signed with the employee, and in the contract itself, the employees should, it is clearly written, you are not supposed to share any confidential information with anyone. The details of those things should be covered in your contract. These are the points which we need to cover. Your confidential and non-disclosure things, your legal responsibilities and rights related to your copyright laws and data protection regulations, responsibility of the information, what are and how you are going to process those information, responsibility for the handling of the information received from the interested party, action taken for the personal disregards of the organization security requirement. So these points should cover under your contractual. So once you have hired a candidate, then you need to sign a proper contract with the employee. Now, you have hired a candidate, you have signed a contract also. Now, third thing is that what you need to provide information security awareness, education, and training. Because you do have lots of controls within your organization, then how the people come to know what things they need to do and what things they need not to do. So there should be a proper awareness. We need to provide proper awareness to the candidates, what things you need to do as a part of information security, what you are not supposed to do. So these things we need to consider as a part of training. Training should be provided on a regular interval of time by the HR department of the organization related to information security, the do's, don'ts, the use of email within the organization, how we are going to use the internet facility, what the organization has been provided to you. You need not to copy and print any of the confidential information within the organization. So these are the things comes under the, you can say, discipline. It comes under the training process. So we need to do the proper training of the candidates. Now, next clause is 6.4. It covers the disciplinary process. In the disciplinary process, if some things have gone wrong, the users uh, intentionally have done some wrong things within the organization. Either he can be a part of a hacking, he has stolen certain data within from the organization, he has misused the IT facilities what we have provided to the user. Okay, in that case, what we need to do, we need to take action against the user. So how we are going to take action against the users? This is defined in the disciplinary process. So we need to have a proper disciplinary process. Uh, the disciplinary process should cover the nature, who, what, when, and how, and the gravity of breaches and its consequences. Whether the offense was intentionally or unintentionally, whether or not the first or repeated offense, whether or not the violator of the properly trained. So these things should be covered. This should be legal things because when you are going to take action against the employee, there would be a proper legal proceeding. There should be a proper disciplinary process within the organization. A disciplinary process should be implemented within the organizations. The next control is your responsibility after the termination of the change of the employment. This is also one of the preventive control when when the peoples are leaving the organization, then
Yeah,
what can.
we do.
Sorry.
No, yeah, like we have to terminate his email IDs and access to the
Yes.
buildings. Yeah.
Yes. So there should be a proper termination of the thing should be there that will see in IT related controls. But there are certain HR responsibilities are there when the people are leaving the organization. They do have all critical information with them. Then how, what are the clauses they need to implement within their contractual so that they may not disclose any information related to a customer, related to things. Sometimes there should be restriction that you cannot join to our customer place or the vendor place. So these kinds of restrictions should be imposed. So for that purpose, we are going to use the non-disclosure agreement also. When the time of leaving also, you are not supposed to share any confidential information with anyone. So the NDA should be signed with the proper employee. Now, next thing is your next thing is your our NDA. We have seen next control would be a remote working. When the people are working remotely, so what would be the proper control? What would be the, because there are many threats when you are working remotely. The threats related in your family, your friends can see the unauthorized information. So there may be multiple threats would be there. So this controls can be clubbed with your technical controls. So we need to have a proper technical control that safe network connection should be there. You are not supposed to work anywhere, like you are not supposed to connect with the public network. Uh, you need to take care, the employees should need to take care of the shoulder surfing related threats when accessing the things from the remote area, remotely. Physical security and all those things comes under the physical security of the assets is the responsibility of the user itself. These clause talks about that. Now, next clause is information security event reporting between. Now, you need to report any vulnerability within your system, your suspected malware or information, your breach of physical security measure, your human errors are there. If you are mishandle the uh, information security assets which has been provided by the organization or any breach related to the CI, this needs to be report. This would be responsibility of the people, HR team of the organization, so that with HR team, with the conjunction of the IT team, they will build a culture in the organization so that employee may report any security breaches. So these are the things are the part of your people related control, what needs to be there. There would be separate policies for each of the processes. We need to create those policies and processes. And once the policy and processes would be completed, then we need to implement. So that's all for the people related control.